Hey, quick random AI stuff in Rumble Shirt. One, I don't think robotics is anywhere near solved. I think before CVPR, I do want to say I had a high expectation of where robotics currently was in terms of getting to a natural point where you have like generalizable robots in the home and all that. But after CVPR, to see all the approaches, they're really good. But I do think they're very early on approaches rather than like, oh, this is the final touch. Like it was much more gripper focused where it's like, oh, the hand can now move stuff and do this and that. I was like, oh, I thought we were there like 10 years ago, but that's not the case. I don't think robotics is near solved. I think most people would agree with that. I do think the approaches I'm seeing now that are emerging are more promising. I think that's the whole thing with world models. I know I did say I had a high expectation, but I do think my timeline is still correct in terms of general AI and just robotics in general, physical AI. I remember I had a lunch a while ago where I talked about my timeline, and around this time, it was more so people are going to be pivoting to world models in terms of an approach of solving robotics or just in terms of AI in general. And that seems to be the case. We're seeing more robotics now. That was like the big thing of CVPR. If you just see the word world models in your thing, who knows what happened. So I think timeline wise, I'm still on, or I guess we're all still on the right, or we're still on my proposed timeline for AI and physical AI. But I do think it's interesting to see that confirmed, at least in terms of robotics and where it's currently at. I think we'll probably see many more advancements by the end of the year, and that's really just going to be a matter of scaling those advances and those approaches by 2027. In terms of other AI stuff, I do think Anthropic is a really interesting company because I was talking to a friend, I think maybe it was this video here, where I think Anthropic is an amazing company, despite its faults at times. But I do think Anthropic is much more of a large language model company. You can say agents, but large language model at its core. Whereas OpenAI does show promise beyond the large language model, tool or service or product. I think that's like the biggest differentiator in terms of what they do. I think people really put a lot of emphasis like, oh, in terms of OpenAI or Anthropic or DeepMind, as if it's a zero sum game. But like I do think the Anthropic is largely going to take this for a while at least. It's going to take this much more corporate in terms of AI use, whereas OpenAI is going to probably supersede in something else beyond, like go to other industries that are not just agents, but also like, oh, maybe we need some sort of robotic application, maybe we need like some sort of hardware or something like that. Especially with a new hardware device, I think it's much more of a consumer device, but still, I do think OpenAI is branching into new and emerging industries where I think Anthropic is conquering current industries. So we'll see how that goes. I do think Anthropic, I think it's a lovely company. I do think right now they're an interesting company to me because they do sometimes, I think this is going to sound very nerdy or just like antagonistic, but I do think Anthropic very at times comes off as antagonistic in how they approach developers. I don't think they're a very developer first company, and it's weird because I think they're much of a, like people who are interested in AI largely do seem to, and like are not really that deep into it, largely do seem to prefer Anthropic, especially after the whole military thing in terms of surveillance and all that. But I just think in terms of even like the API use or just the communication with developers, they do seem to be more like, oh guys, like you guys are our main customers, even though they they seem to be like I think the people who advocate for the greatest quality of Claude or Claude Code and all that are developers. So I really do wonder why that's the case. I do think when it comes to companies, especially companies at the scale of Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta, I know these are varying scales, but still, I do think the communication is very much intentional, and maybe it's more so trying to be seen as like an Apple of sorts, whereas OpenAI could be like the Android in a sense. I think that's kind of sad, but I also do wonder if it will last. I do think at times I see Anthropic as I fear Anthropic has more of a boring approach to AI, even though they have like a lot of crazy advancements. It sometimes does feel like, oh, they're gonna become like the workday of AI, and that does worry me. It's like I don't want AI to be boring. I don't want it to be. I want it to be like this cool and fascinating technology that's pushing science forward. So we'll see how that goes. Overall, though, I think it's still an amazing company. I don't mean any of those as an insult. Not just to say that because I want to get hired by it one day, but I just think it's true that it's like it has its great parts, but also has its faults. I do hope that changes too. I also think a lot of Anthropic is much more for premium use cases instead of just general use cases. I think OpenAI and ChatGPT and Codex definitely excel for general stuff, whereas Claude does feel more of if you have the money, if you're a company, come use us. But even then, I've been shifting to Codex more. I've been finding more utility out of it. I even use Claude to now prompt my Codex. So it's been a big shift from ChatGPT prompting Claude code. I think that's why I'm emphasizing this point of why it's dangerous, because I think the difference between Claude and ChatGPT is never that big. It's always something where it's like, okay, who do I have the most favor with, and who do I think is much more reliable? I think ChatGPT right now has established more reliability, in my opinion. Claude is still fairly new. It's hard to imagine it, but it's still fairly new. I don't really feel like I have my roots sunk into Claude, such that anytime a Claude does feel like, oh, it's not working to the best of my ability, it doesn't even seem to have the interest to work to the best of my ability, I just switch to ChatGPT, or like, okay, I'm just gonna switch to ChatGPT. Whereas ChatGPT is something I see using like years down the line. Claude just seems like, oh, I guess I can use it for now, and I don't really have any loyalty to it. So like, despite all the AIs and advancements, ChatGPT has still be something I've kept by my side. So I really do think Claude has to investigate into how they can build that brand loyalty, because right now it doesn't seem that strong. Right? It seems like, oh guys, I guess we're better for now, but then what happens when we're not, right? What happens when our model is superseded? Then it's easy for everyone to go to the next thing, because after you're done with this project, or if you find a way to get a context to the next model or another model provider, then it's really not that hard. But we'll see. Besides that, I have nothing else to say, so have a great day.